yeah, she almost cried, have the tears in her eyes. So at that moment, I think it's not about learning Chinese or you really hand in the homework. I think for the students at that moment, it's really nice that somebody is there, is to listening to her, to know about her. Yeah, I think maybe that is after probably many years, you remember this moment, you remember this real connection with your teacher.
Thank you very much for tuning in to listen to this episode with Jessica Sun. Jessica co-founded China Talk in 2014 together with her husband Ed Sande. Ed is a China Techwatcher. I interviewed him for episode number 2. Ed shared in this episode about the development of the Chinese internet companies. He also shared his experiences of living in China and his process of learning to cook 1,000 authentic Chinese dishes in the last few years. Please go to listen to this episode to find out more about the lives of Ed and Jessica. China Talk provides knowledge transfer in the field of Chinese language, culture, and digital technology to students, entrepreneurs, and professionals. Since 2014, Jessica has been teaching Chinese language and culture at different secondary schools, vocational schools, and universities. She also teaches business people to learn Chinese. In this episode, I talked with Jessica about her life as a teacher in the Netherlands, about how she builds connections with her students. We also talked about cultural differences and many other differences between Chinese and Dutch education. Welcome and enjoy the conversation. Good morning, Jessica. Thank you so much for taking time to come to join my podcast.
Thank you, Yame. Thank you for having me. Very glad to be here.
Great. Could you please give a brief introduction about yourself?
I'm Jessica, and my Chinese name is Sun Hui. I was born and grew up in China and have all the education in China. Have worked 10 years in China, and when I was 31, I moved to the Netherlands, and I'm teaching in Dutch schools about Chinese language and culture. And besides my work, I have went back to universities for my teaching certificate. So I have studied 5 years in Leiden University. And now I'm teaching in schools and also for private students.
You are teaching students for all kinds of all ages. Your youngest student is 9-year-old, and your oldest student is about 70. And in between, you teach a lot of middle school students. You are a Chinese teacher at many middle schools in the Netherlands, and also you teach a lot for business people. Could you please share with us how can you differentiate your teaching and teaching method to help all kinds of students to learn Chinese and to grow?
The first is that Chinese is not like as Dutch or French is a very like big subject in a school. So therefore, I teach in different schools, combine that into like a real job. And it's really various and it's so fascinating. I really love that. And so much variety, like you said, the young kids and also to the senior, everybody is very different and they have different needs. So what I think I do is that to see what their needs are and then therefore to go for it. For example, for the middle school students, and they began to start learning Chinese when they were year 1, so they were like 12, 13 years old. So they are still kids. So like sort of to show them, and learning is fun. So and so this keep them to and to be motivated to keep going. And for example, for university students, for example, in Fontis, they also have course Chinese. For a group of exchange students, so they're from all over the world. They have there are Dutch students, of course, also students from all kinds of countries, and then it's like an international. It itself is like an international environment, and they also can learn from each other. In this case, I think their needs is that to realize that. Realize this world is how emerged with different kinds of people. They are one of them, and at the same time they also learn about China and learn about Chinese language, and to see how they can approach to a country as well as they are selves as one part of this international community. Other people will also see their culture and learn their language. So that's also a different needs. Yeah. So
Yeah.
to what I with always say is that what their needs is, and also for this 9 years old and young student, she is originally come from China, and then what her needs and also her way of learning, of course, is very different than the senior like 70 plus students. Yeah, all of those are very fascinating. Also, I think being a teacher, of course, the first starting point is that I teach them the language and the culture, but from them, I have learned so much, and that's so inspiring. Of course, it's great. I really appreciate that I have this chance.
For many students, it's very exciting to join the Chinese lessons, because it's so different from what they have learned before. How can you keep their passion for Chinese, keep that fire burning?
That's a really a challenge. I mean, first of all, most of the schools, they have one Chinese teacher teaching Chinese, Chinese teacher Chinese, or they also have not anyway, they are not like a big subject as French or German. So the students will always have, like in my school, they always have me as their Chinese teacher. If they learn from year 1 to year 6, oh, this is 6 years, I'm with them. I have calculated once that for the students, they are various. Some of the students every year they get different lessons per week. So I spend time with them. If they study from year 1 to 6, I having lesson with them for 240 hours to 300 hours.
Wow.
So it's really like building up a relationship to the end. That's a really beautiful thing. Of course, also during the process, some of the students, they will stop because Chinese is not a compulsory subject as English or mathematics. So students at the start point, they need a challenge. So Chinese is their challenge because they're doing very well and they need more and more other things to make them motivated to keep going. And what is this? What is Chinese culture? What is China? What is Chinese language? So let's keep them going. Well, as I see very clearly at some of the time, for example, especially when they from the third year go to fourth year, they need to choose their package for their future education. So a lot of students in this case, they really need to focus on the compulsory subject. So that's a time a lot of students finally consider all of the elements. They stopped with Chinese. It's really a pity because it doesn't mean that they are not good at Chinese, but they just need more time to continue with other subjects. Yeah. And for the students who do continue, and that's really fun, I think, first part. And when they are kids in the first 1 or 2 years, and they continuously growing to young adults, 16, and then until they graduate, they are 18 years old. So it's really also see them growing. that's also very inspiring to see from kids to go into young adults what they have learned and along the way. Not only it's definitely for the middle school students, definitely not about learning language, and also really to like see them growing as a person. Also, I think Chinese language and culture giving them a different perspective to look at the world, and also to yeah, in a different way to look at themselves. So when they're learning language, they say, oh yeah, it's so many challenges, so therefore they understand like how others maybe learn their own language. Maybe they have the student their classmates from other countries, and now they can understand that better, and why it's a challenge for their classmates learning Dutch, for example. Yeah, I think that's really motivated, and also they see themselves also growing. So I think that's why they finally also came to have Chinese for 6 years.
Yeah, great to hear. And you organized exchanges with Chinese schools and with the Dutch middle schools. Could you please share with us about this process, and what did the students, Chinese students, learn from the Dutch students, and what did the Dutch students learn from the Chinese students?
Well, if we say that our Dutch students, and we go to China, what they have see is that they literally actually see the culture difference. And for example, they lived in the family, and go together with the Chinese students, go to Chinese school, so they have experienced the Chinese school, and they have seen how the Chinese parents, for example, they are not always with the students, and like they have a lot of like overwork. One student said his mate, like body, without everybody has a Chinese body, and his Chinese body, the parents are doctors, so they will never be like in during the dinner time at home. So this Chinese student always make food for him, like in a certain ways. And so he also said about this, like how his Chinese body like feel lonely, because he's also the only child at home. So we at school learned one child policy, and all of those like from a very big general looking at the picture of a policy. Well, in this case, they go to China and they experienced how a one child, and how is their life? How do they experience that only one there? And also how about the Chinese people's life, and how the working culture from their parents to see. Well, they also make real contact with Chinese people. And one student said, and she went to this family, and then the family, like all the family members, like aunt, and the other sister, brothers, all the grandma, grandpa, all come together to the family and bring him all the nice food, and hey, you need to try this and you need to try that, and then they make dumplings together, and writing Chinese calligraphies together. So in this case, they also say that in a real situation, how the Chinese family, they are one. Like we also say that, we also in the lesson say that Chinese family, they are more like united together, and they have more contact, more close. So in this case, they really experience this, that. And so the Chinese people's curiosity also say that. And one student said he has a lot of hair on his arm, and the grandma said, oh, can I touch those hairs? Like, so they really like literally touch. And so I think that's really really funny, because in Dutch culture, and anybody, in spite how curious they are, they would not say, oh, let me touch your this, or let me touch your hair. So you really feel that, and they feel like very, very funny and very close, and like they have the real communicate. They even don't don't speak that much Chinese. They can say, "Ah, ni hao, I like this or don't like that." But they have a perfect communication with a grandpa, grandma, like aunt, or yeah, uncles. And they notice that communication is much more than language. That's so yeah, so valuable experience for them. So I'm really happy for them. They personally experience this.
Yeah, it's also very valuable experience for them and to see how people live and communicate and how people engage with each other in a totally different cultural setting. And
Exactly.
Jessica, you also worked 5 years as a student counselor at an international secondary school in Xi'an before you moved to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
I think you must have experienced the cultural differences between the Chinese education and Dutch education. Could you please share a little bit about these differences?
Yeah, I think every moment is still experience that difference myself. Because of course I was a student in China for also middle school and university, and I also went to university in the Netherlands. And I worked, like you said, working in the international school. It's also a lot of Chinese stuff. Actually, more of the stuff are Chinese, and also now I work here. So I always think that if we can see one difference, is probably in Chinese education of the purpose of those education is to avoid mistakes. And I will always say that 8 is not good enough because you still made like 2 points mistakes. Whereas those mistakes, and in the event, for example, in the international school, when I work in China, we have any big events or anything, we always to fight for making no mistakes. Well, in the Netherlands education, that's more like explore for yourself and to sort of to learn things from your mistakes. I think that's very very different. And when in China, we always say 10 is our goal. While here, my classmates, for example, in Leiden, when I study, I think, oh, enough is enough. 6 is good. And yeah, 8 is great. 10 is impossible. Yeah, and also like in Chinese school, what all the teachers we do is that to yeah to also to make everything goes right instead of making mistakes. Well, when I began to teach in the Netherlands, of course, the classroom settings or the students' culture are very different. And as I experienced the classroom management problems, I think very challenging. I went to my team leader. I said, how do I deal with this situation? How do I solve this problem? That's what we always think, probably from a Chinese perspective, Chinese teacher's perspective. There should be a solution. There should be one a good plan. Well, my team leader said, you just try it out. You try it out. To sort of you make mistakes. You try this. If this doesn't work, you try another thing. So making mistakes is never be a big deal. You just, if you see that doesn't work, you try something else. So I think that makes the work as well as the life more real and more enjoyable. Because when I was in China, I always have a lot of pressure, especially also in the international school when I worked there. So the pressure is that, oh, what went wrong? Oh my gosh, I hope everything goes right. What's a mistake? It cannot happen. But if now we look back, really in the life, there is full of challenges. There are full of mistakes. So we cannot avoid the mistakes. Why not we just let them happen and to be relaxed and tolerant with those mistakes and not setting our goals to be like avoiding the mistakes. I think probably that's the most I have learned from my learning experience and also teaching experience. So so Dutch students can also to explore themselves, making mistakes and to find out what doesn't work, and finally what works.
Yeah, you also followed education in China, and you studied in China at university and also here. I think there's also a huge difference from a student perspective. Could you please share a little bit about the differences you personally experienced during your study?
I studied almost 5 years in Leiden. Of course, that's a university education. So if I compare with university education in China, is that I think in China is the teachers tells you what it should be, what it is, and then we as students learn. While in the Netherlands, in Leiden, is the teacher, they take you and then to go with you for this learning experience, and you find out, the student themselves, to find out what it is and what actually should be. So I remembered in one course in Leiden, the teacher gave us like reading materials, assignment for reading. So I read that piece was was in Dutch. I think that took me a lot of time to read that piece, and sometimes I think it's a bit weird what the opinion in the article, but I think I need to understand that. And teacher let us to read, it must be very good stuff. So I read that, and when we go to the lesson, and we also have other reading material, and the teacher said that piece, that's a wrong opinion. That's not correct. I was very surprised. I said, isn't that the teacher always let us to read what is good? Why we read and this is not right? And so from our like the settings, our default setting is that what on the books the teacher let us to read is what we should know, what is correct. That's what I have experienced in China. That of course we say that is a less it's not a best way, but in China, of course, there are also the situations. Why is that? Because you have such a big class, 70 students, 70, 60 students classroom. There is no situation, there is no those conditions for the students to explore that for them. From the Chinese teacher's perspective, look, this is right. You know this is just a short way, most effective and efficient way. We learned that. So I will always think that, oh, what on the book is right, what the teacher told us is right. Well, in this case, the teachers in Leiden, they take us, let ourselves to say what is right, what is wrong, what it should be. So the teacher could set this thing instead of tell you, let you experience. So I think that's the most obvious difference what I have experienced.
Yeah, and you are yourself is a teacher, and you also work with a lot of teachers at the middle school and also at university level. What makes a good teacher great?
If I think about the good teachers I have in my educations in China or in the Netherlands, I think they are very different. Some of them, they have a great sense of humor. Some of them, they are very serious. Some of them, they are like very sweet, everything is good. While some of them are very strict. I think one thing is common in all of those. I think they are good teachers, or they have deep impressions on me, and also a deep influence on me, that they are authentic. They are they are themselves. I think that's might make a good teacher, like really curious about the student, turning every situation to be a chance to know them more. I think after I have this like a switch, I really learned a lot about students, like really asking questions. For example, once I remember one student, she didn't hand in the homework in time, and of course that's a bit annoying. I mean, that's homework, you do it, and she didn't do that. So I had to. I'm just curious, how is that? I said, yeah, I noticed that you did great in the lesson, and then you really participate and you show your interest. I think you can do those homework very easily. How come that you didn't submit your homework? And then she began to tell the story that how the home situation, like the parents are getting divorced, and seemingly she has a horse a bit far away. She need to take care of that and to go back and forth. And then she said, I really want to do those homework, but I'm so tired at the end of the day. I just said, God, let me lie down in the bed. So and then she almost cried, have the tears in her eyes. So at that moment, I think it's not about learning Chinese or you really hand in the homework. I think for the students at that moment is really really nice that somebody is there, is to listening to her, to know about her, to really make a contact. Yeah, let her to be herself. Yeah, I think maybe that is after probably many years, you remember this moment, you remember this real connection with your teacher.
It's really, yeah, it's a beautiful story, and to describe, to tell what makes a good teacher great, and the real connection you make with the students, to care for them and to be there for them and to listen to them deeply. Thank you so much for sharing this story. And Jessica, you also wrote a very interesting blog with one of your students, Stan, and I think last month. And he shared a very interesting story about his learning journey as a very busy working guy, and who is traveling a lot. But he shared how this learning journey has helped him to engage with Chinese people in another way. Could you please share with us a little bit about the common challenges the business people have when they are learning Chinese, and how they can overcome these challenges, and what this learning process will really help them in the end?
Yes, thank you. I saw that the article, and most actually the student wrote that part, how they at the beginning think that like I cannot learn Chinese because I'm so busy. I'm full of schedules for meetings and business trips. How can I learn Chinese? And also he said a very interesting moment. He said, every time I saw somebody on TV and non-Chinese, they speak fluent Chinese, I think, wow, that's amazing. But at the same time, he said to himself, that's not something for a common guy like me. He said, but now if he look at himself, it's really a totally situation. He learned Chinese for a bit more than 2 years at this time. And he already contacted directly with Chinese factories. And they also have, of course, if you directly contact with Chinese factories, also the price will going down. And also have an interesting business contact. and they are interested in their products and service. So yeah, if I look back, I think the challenges for business people is that they think they are so busy, and how do they fit in Chinese into their schedule? So that's also at the beginning my students facing. So we just made very flexible schedules, like whenever it's possible for him. When he has a business trip into other country, and then we will just like have this lesson in literally in another country. When he finished the business meeting in another country, like 9 o'clock in the evening, or sometimes before his full day, like 8 o'clock in the morning, or sometimes 7. I think yeah, really make that possible, and then to fit in. And then he also has done is that having the listening material. So when he needs to drive, so listen to Chinese. When he wants to have a walk, also have listen to Chinese. So they created a sort of Chinese environment, sort of. So you have make contact with this language by listening. So I think that's one thing, maybe to make time for that. Maybe you don't have 1 hour per day. Maybe you can do half an hour, or you can do 50 minutes. So and make that little time. And also I think is that most important is that people had the ideas that, can I learn Chinese? Is that even possible to learn Chinese? So that's why I also make that article you mentioned that I read together with my students, that can you learn Chinese too? So yeah, so I think the first is that you have confidence and to learn a language, or going to this goal for yourself to do it. And a lot of business people also say that in Dutch, in the Netherlands, they said, of course, the Chinese part, they speak fluent English. They can have no problem communicate with each other. Why would I still invest so much time to learning their language? So I think also that that is one question, is that you think that is that necessary to learn the language, and do you have the confidence to do it? So I think first is that necessary to learn the language, as from for example my students, from a business perspective. I think that really you benefit a lot, because he also said in the article is that some of the words you think you use the correct words, while at the same time there's actually still a lot of hidden information you didn't notice in another culture. And one of another party approached him, and they began to type Chinese. And this Chinese person actually said to my students that, oh, your Chinese is great, so we can talk in Chinese. There is no language barrier. No language barrier. I mean, of course, they speak English. There is no language barrier. There was no language barrier, but now they feel like there's really no language barrier. So I think that's probably is from a perspective that they also said one thing, that if you speak, if you can talk to another people, you talk to them. If you speak their language, you talk to their heart, something like that. So I think that's a moment that they really have this connection. It's like, okay, they appreciate that you spend the time, you spend the effort to learn their language. It's immediately they think, okay, this is a real connection. I think that's probably the first reason to say, let's do it.
Yeah, that's the real value, I think, in the end. That you can never speak, maybe within a few years, you will never speak the language fluently, but you get the feeling to touch their hearts, and you know how to engage with them and to connect with them in another way, which will be very effective also for your business. And Jessica, if we look at our cultures and Dutch culture and Chinese culture, and you moved from China to the Netherlands. And I'm just curious, what's the the greatest culture shock for you when you came here, and how did you manage to overcome to really get over it?
I think the culture shock is definitely culture shocks, and well, I always think that look when I was in China, I worked in an international environment. I worked in 5 years in tourism as tour guide, tour leader. So every day I was connect with sort of Westerners. And also I work in the school. There's also an international school with international teachers. So I thought I'm also bit westernized. I think, oh, I understand the culture better. I probably will not have the culture shock. But I did. I had experienced a lot of culture shocks in the Netherlands. So but at the end of the day, I think the culture. I will also share my culture shock. But as I think at the end of the day, we also say there are culture differences. But we will find out that in spite of those different perspectives, we approach things, we are really the same person. I think that's also the students, they find out. And one student, not one, as one group of students, they graduate from middle school, they have 6 years of Chinese. They said they have learned is that the cultural difference we had in the lesson. Well, actually, they also say that how we together went through the cultural differences, like how I behave, how I approach things, and the different things. And they said at the end of the day, they noticed that all the people are the same, in spite that you might grow up in different environment also. I think, yeah, that's also for us. We, at the end of the day, we are the same person, just different ways. For example, the biggest culture shock for me is that how you, for example, openly to talk about what you want. I mean, in China, it's like we just keep doing things, and I not like to express your wish or what you want. For example, I said is that my culture shock was is that I work in the middle school, and at that time I work as an SSP. So all the lessons I get paid. Well, of course, at the school, you also work as another other part, like you need to prepare for examinations, and the other people, they want to have some information about your school, how Chinese going for like that. Also, you have a budget for your subject, all kinds of things. So for years, I just do that. I think, okay, if the school don't say anything, I just keep doing that for free. I didn't charge those hours. But then during the Corona times, and all of those administrations were like doubled, tripled. So you need to figure out how those like online lessons works, how you make videos for the students, so they can also and learn that at home and not and for just the different ways. And that all of those digital meetings, how if a school will, how they approach the Corona, whether they will have the different classrooms or half online, half at school, or in school you do wear mask, all kinds of stuff. It's of course that's not in that 1 hour lesson, that's not paid. So I feel like really and sort of like a lot. So I thought I just encouraged myself. I said, let me talk with school to say that, and this is my situation and what we do. And of course, I also have doubt, because in our culture, in Chinese culture, is that you just do your things once, and your leader or who else will just give you a salary raise or or promote you, or what they will make decision for you, most of the time, of course. And then I I went to school. I explained my situation, and my team leader and he said, "Of course, Jessica, of course you deserve those extra hours." And it's just without what I imagined, like maybe and to say certain things, they just think, okay, this is natural and you should deserve it. And they said, is that, Jessica, why didn't you say this earlier? You should just say this earlier. Yeah. So I think, oh my gosh, I just need to express my wish to say the difficulties I have come across. Well, in China, it's just we just basically come across those difficulties ourselves to take that as one part of our job. So I think in Netherlands, those working culture, it just really, really directly. I mean, this is what we have learned from the book. You being more direct. We have learned being direct, but how direct? I mean, how to be direct. I think this is one of the most valuable lessons for me, is that, and just overcome what we think in the Chinese culture. Just go to your team leaders to talk with them and to say your challenges you have met and what you hope for extra hours or what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just such a minor thing, you think, but we as Chinese, we can keep struggling inside for a very long time.
Yeah.
We just don't dare to speak it out and to share with people, and we think we should deal with it by ourselves. So we should not just make other people difficult, and that's our way of living with other people.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we're all was actually with good intentions, and we just approach that differently. Well, in the Netherlands, you was good for others, so therefore we need to be direct for what we want and what we hope for, and then so you get what we want, so it's good for both. And in China, is that, like you said, we also think that we should not make other people difficult. We should just take it for ourselves. Well, at the end of the day, both are not be bothered, sort of.
Yeah. It's a good, really a good learning moment for you when your team leader said it in this way. I think we can all learn from it. And Jessica, just to wrap up this podcast, I just want to ask you, for the people who are listening to this podcast, who are learning Chinese, who are having difficulties and challenges, can you give them some tips about learning Chinese and how they can, just keep on going and to make that progress?
Yeah, I think that learning is also a journey. You have you have ups and downs, and sometimes you feel like more cheerful and have more energy, and sometimes you just feel a bit down. And also when you feel a bit down, and also don't beat up yourself and just allow yourself for some time, and then you have energy to continue. And also don't forget to say that what you have achieved. And what along this learning journey, what you have also joins, don't forget about that. And for the people who is still thinking whether to start or not, and then just give yourself a chance to try it out. I mean, it maybe seems scary, the Chinese language, and with all of those the tones different, and also and the characters, every character looks like a monster is looking at you. So, and also, don't scare yourself, just try it out. I mean, every language have the easy part and the challenging part. For example, Chinese, all the verbs it stays the same, whether it's yesterday or morning, or you have done or you will do, and the verb seems it always stays the same. That's a big, like the good news. I mean, for the people and to explore that. I mean, for maybe we learn Dutch, I think learning the verbs, that's a lifelong task for me to learn. So there are also easy part for Chinese. Don't be scared and just try it out to explore for yourself and do it. Go with this journey and have fun.
Yeah. Very important to have fun. And this podcast is called Our Cultures and Our Words because, I really hope we can let all of the personal stories inspire people and to let people see actually we are all human beings and we can overcome all kinds of cultural differences to really deeply connect with each other. And for the people who are listening, who are doing business with China, and can you give them some tips about engaging with Chinese people and how to create this connection with Chinese people?
Yeah, it's a very, very, very good question. And I'm also thinking about that. I mean, learn Chinese culture. That's also very, very big. Like, where to start? Do I read more news about China or where? I mean, maybe a small thing to start is that to connect with the Chinese people around you. I think from the people to people communication, you will also learn a lot for how they behave, how they approach certain things. For example, if you are a student and you have your classmates probably come from China. If you are business people, you might have some contact. They are Chinese, and just to have a small contact, start with them, maybe to learn those people. I think that's people to people contact is really a valuable way to learn the culture. I mean, at the end of the day, the culture are all about the people. If they start with one, and you will learn, and you will learn more, and then you maybe know the second one, and you'll get a more a bigger and bigger a group of Chinese people, and then that way you learn Chinese culture. I mean, for business people, probably it's difficult for them just and go contact with their Chinese business partner, or maybe just start with a small conversation or somebody they know in their neighborhood. Start to know Chinese people and then Chinese culture.
To connect with Chinese people to learn their culture. Thank you very much, Jessica, for sharing your experiences and sharing your education journey and sharing all kinds of differences you see and you experience during your educational journey. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Yang Mei, and thank you for your podcast.
I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. You can connect with Jessica on LinkedIn or through China Talk website. You will find all the contact details in the YouTube and podcast show notes. I want to end this podcast with a quote which I really love. One looks back with appreciation to the brilliant teachers, but with gratitude to those who touched our human feelings. The curriculum is so much necessary raw material, but warmth is a vital element for the growing plant and for the soul of the child. This beautiful quote is from the brilliant Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. I think education is not just about feeding the mind, but also about unlocking the heart and touching the soul. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for listening. If this podcast is valuable to you and your business, please subscribe and help me by sharing this podcast with more people. It's my mission to help people from different cultures to connect with each other, learn from each other, and inspire each other. You can also go to check out my website for more information about what I do and the kindness projects I support. I genuinely hope that this podcast and the stories my guests share will give all of us insights, ideas, and inspiration to create a more connected world together.